Hi everyone, welcome back to the Publishing Dialogue. Thank you so much for tuning in again. We're back with our third episode, and we have a very special guest, Sacha Fortune, one of our very own authors. And I'd like to ask Akshay to introduce Sasha to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Pranika. So, Sasha is a journalist, writer, and editor. She has many feathers in her hat. She started off with a background in journalism, and now she's kind of started her own company for content writing and editing since the past 15 years. She's also a novelist along with short stories for her novels, the Heart and Cold series, which have been her baby for over 15 years. That's a very short and sweet introduction for her, and I'm going to turn it over to Sasha to tell us a little bit more about herself and how she got started in this journey of writing.
Okay, sure. So, first of all, I guess I should start by saying hi, everyone. I'm a writer based in Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. And that itself is such a diverse, multicultural country with so many external influences, both in the past and in the present. We have a lot of external influences from the UK, from the US, from the Caribbean and around. And I've always thought of my writing as something that could be based anywhere. You know, I don't focus on the genre, but on the characters. Who are these people? What's unique about them? What's universal about them? And while I was growing up, I always felt like there was this tug of war of how should I write? How should I represent my background? You know, but the local writers that I was reading, they were a different generation. I didn't feel like I had so much in common with them. So that era that they wrote about is not what I grew up with. So I focused on writing what I know, which is people, you know, relationships and stories that have that kind of universal element. And I think that's what I carry through every type of writing that I do, whether it's my Heart and Cold series, my short story collection, and anything else I write, really, there's always that element of anywhere.
Okay, that's lovely. It's very good to hear, especially given the scene of what publishing is right now and how everything is, it's good to have so much tradition and so much cultural inclusivity in all the books that we're seeing. And it's so great to have you, here with such a diverse background and writing about it. That's really nice. Would you like to tell us about your writing process and how that evolved with as you became a writer?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been writing as a child. I've written for anything like the local competitions I entered. I won some local writing competitions. I would have started writing societies and clubs at school. And even as I went off to university, I continued always pushing that envelope to write something that I'm proud of and to work on projects that I'm proud of. So I've written novels since I was like a teenager. When I was under 10. I'm afraid to even look at what that looks like right now, but I've always been writing novels. And in terms of publishing things, I first realized the power of publishing when I got to university. And I published some poems and stories in Writers Guild anthologies for my society. I think that was the first time I realized, anyone can publish something on a small scale. You don't need a major publisher to bankroll you. So I started looking into self-publishing. There were a few companies at the time, but they all seemed to be like vanity press. And I kind of dropped the idea. And then this would have been, say, 15 years ago. So as you know, I mean, ebooks completely took off over the last 15 to 20 years. So by the time all these years, I'm like, I need to really put my money where my mouth is. I need to get back out there and look into it and publish things myself. So I never tried to publish traditionally. Part of it is, you cannot fear rejection or that long list you always hear writers talk about. But a major part of it was that I didn't want to end up with my books kind of being shoved into that particular hole just to fit what the industry wanted or what the publisher said had to be done. So it's also why I'm really happy with Saga. They have been able to tell you what you need to fix without completely changing everything that you've put your passion into, and they work hand in hand with you to kind of build the story you want that readers also would like to have.
Okay. I know you self-published, and there are three novels of yours which you self-published. How was that process for you? What was like the difficulty in it, but what was also the allure to it? Because self-publishing, while difficult, is a great tool for many writers. So can you tell us a bit about it?
For me, I think I looked into what would make the most sense in terms of the skills that you have that you need for self-publishing. So if you are not good at a lot of things, if you can't use Microsoft Word, you're not good at online things, you can't format things yourself, you're not going to be good at self-publishing unless you hire people to do those specialized skills. But fortunately, I've worked in journalism. I've actually had like layout programs, Adobe Creative Suite that I've used while studying, and I actually learned how to use some of these tools. And the knowledge you transfer from one program usually goes into another. So you're able to pick up quickly. I've always seen in all of these writers groups that, writers they struggle with some of the most basic things. And if you are able to either hire someone to do certain things or you're able to do certain things yourself, you'll be a lot more successful with self-publishing than other writers. What I did not do, sadly, was focus on marketing. So I self-published and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm technically excellent. I can format a book. I can figure out how to put things up on, I put it up on Amazon, KDP Publishing. I press publish and then I'm like, why is no one buying my book? So yeah, you need to research the marketing side, not just the publishing side. When you're self-publishing, even if you're traditionally published, you still need to have, in this day and age,
Correct.
social media. You need to have your networks. You need to be able to put yourself out there more than just waiting for the publisher to do all that work for you.
Correct. Actually, that's another interesting question that comes to my mind then connected to that is how do you kind of build your social presence as an author, not just for your books, but as an entity of, Sasha Fortune author? Because I've seen you do a lot of book reviews and, you have your own blog as well. So how do you use those tools to lead into marketing for your book?
Well, you can do it in a lot of different ways. I mean, I think I probably should be putting more behind my social media presence. There are authors that do a lot more. They use every program. They go on Instagram, they do stories, they show you their personal lives, they show you their book lives, they post the end captures, so there's a lot of different things you can do. What has worked for me in terms of just getting my name out there among other writers as well, because a lot of it is networking. So I've started my reader blog where I've probably done at least 150 book reviews just in the last year alone. Since the beginning of this year, actually, I've done at least 100. And I think when you give to the writer world, because I do it for free, I put time into it. And a lot of writers, they start, saying, hey, my writer friend, they would push your books. Sometimes they would tag you when they post the review that you've written, so someone may go and look at your work. And there's a lot of terms of engagement that you can do as an author to get that. You put love out there, you get love back, right?
Right.
And of course, you can also spend money behind it. I haven't done that in a big way. You can invest in buying audiences, more or less. You can invest in ads. You can pay promotional companies to create content for you. And that's something I've kind of stayed away from because I wanted to be, honest with my own voice. When I post something, it's not something that someone told me to post. It's something that I was feeling at the moment, I may post something about my personal life, something about my book, and I kind of do that. But a lot of authors, they have a formula. They can put a calendar and one day I post this, the next day I post that, and their feeds look excellent. So that's what works for you. You really need to find your voice with social media and stay consistent with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Definitely, I think that's really good advice for any new authors as well, where just find your own voice and stay consistent with it. Which brings me to another question, which is about the writing community. Actually, since you've been so involved with the writing community, what is that like? Just with other authors, things that you've picked up from other authors that you think has worked for you, and things that you think that, oh no, I should stray away from these things.
it's a brutal community. I'll be honest. No, if you join 10 Facebook groups, you'll see lots of badgering going on when like a newbie author asks something, and the more experienced authors may say something like, well, haven't you read X, Y, and Z? Haven't you looked into it? You need to probably do your own research a bit first. You start off by being quiet, do your own research, take some time before diving into certain things. There's a lot of love in the community, a lot of kind souls to guide you, but if you take advantage of people's time, they're not going to appreciate it at all. And I think among writers, there's a lot of competition in terms of, looking at your numbers. How much are you selling? What genre are you doing? What's your process like? And there's a lot of, that kind of animosity. That it's a shame, but I think it's in every industry. But with writers, it can be such an isolating profession that when you connect to other writers, you're always going to look and see, well, how is this one successful? How am I not successful? What are they doing that I can't do or won't do or don't have the money to do? And then a lot of writers do it part-time. I mean, especially with self-published authors, a lot of it is part-time. They have their families, they have their jobs. So, certain things that some writers can afford to do, others can't. So a lot of that plays into the writing community and the level of expertise that there is, the level of community that some people are willing to engage in and some are not.
It's actually very interesting. And picking up on what you said about writing being kind of an isolated process, how would you define your writing process? Especially since you've written short stories as well, you've written some journalistic pieces, probably some poems, and of course you have your full-length, long-form novels with proper plot and characters. So how does that differentiate for you?
My personal writing process is all over the place. I would love to be more disciplined, but my characters are not that obedient. When it's for my Heart and Cold series, I found that I do my best work late at night with no distractions, but sometimes, I'm driving down the road and I have a scene in my head and I'm at a traffic light, and I don't recommend this, of course. I stop and I capture it on my phone. Okay, this is what happened. This is what happened. What I've done also is I did recently was kind of record myself while driving and kind of play off scenes so that I have it in my head. And when I'm back home, I can go back to it and refer to it and write it down. Yeah. Some writers, they focus better on, setting aside time every day. I remember I've read, I hope everyone's read Stephen King's On Writing. And he was just like, you get it done. You start, you write something, you get it done. Some people work better like that. So to each his own again, every process can be completely different. Once you get some writing done, the editing is always going to be a mess, and that can come much later once, the story is actually there.
Yes, agreed, definitely. But what is your editorial process like? Now coming back to, since you are an author and an editor, so how does it differ from your process of writing when you're editing? Not just, and this comes for other books, your books, both.
I've been editing professionally for a really long while. I mean, professionally, I would say 15 years, but unprofessionally, maybe. I was that child that, I wrote my own notes for school, or my mom would write something and have me edit it. Like that level, I always saw this is how something is supposed to sound. Right. It doesn't feel right unless it sounds this particular way. And in terms of my educational background, I am a former national scholar. I've placed in the world at a writing subject. I won a national scholarship and I went on to study media and cultural studies at Lancaster University, and then international journalism masters in Westminster. So all of this always played into the type of, I looked at writing from a particular must be like this in terms of editing. So there's professional training behind a journalism degree. There's also your personal input as an editor. And of course, you cannot edit yourself. I'm terrible at that, but I can see a book and I know what I would change. I can see a sentence and know what I would change. Yeah. So that mindset has always come into when I'm reading a book. Even in the way I write a book review, I always have, okay, what didn't I like about this book? There's something about the pacing that it felt a little bit off. And sometimes the writers have reached out to me and say, really, could you fix this scene for me? And that's how I got some editorial work based on writing a review. And realized that the feedback was useful for how they would like to change the book. So editing has always been a part of me in a big way. And I like being able to, I guess, fix things that don't look right to me. I think every editor is like that, though. You guys must be like that as well. You're like, we don't like how this sounds.
A little bit.
Yeah. But I think I started out a little bit like that because I'm an avid reader, and then I would be like, I think maybe this should change, maybe that should change. So yeah.
Yeah.
There's something like there's a fit in your head. There's a
to correct it. Just that doesn't sound right. But speaking about editing and writing, so you're an editor and a writer, but when it comes to your writing, of course, it's difficult to take editorial feedback. And, as a writer, writers are sensitive about their own work. So how difficult is it for you to kind of receive that kind of editorial feedback from whether it's editors like ourselves or whether it's reviewers or the readers?
Right. So I've gotten horrible reviews, thank God. I probably would cry in a ball somewhere, but I have gotten feedback, especially from the very first version of my first Heart and Cold book, just that it's way too long. And readers, and I appreciate it now as I've started my review blog, where I see a book that's, really long, and I'm like, I just don't have time for that. I don't have time to spend double the amount of time reading a book, even if it's an amazing book. So I appreciate it a lot more now. And I've edited down based on that feedback. And then when I handed it over to Saga, again, editing down even more. So keep whittling away to get to the actual story, right? So that's what I cannot do for myself. And at first, it takes a while to get to that process. But for other writers, it's a lot easier because I'm reading and they're off on a tangent. And I'm like, why are you telling me about this? I don't care about this. I want to know about this. I'm excited about this, So that's how the editorial process is for anything else I'm reading that isn't my own work.
Interesting.
That's very interesting. So I would then want to come back to a publishing bit a little bit. And I want to ask you, what is the one thing that you love and hate about the publishing industry? If you can just drop a comparison quickly.
It's changed a lot over the last, 10, 20 years. And a big thing was self-publishing. I love that it's so easy now, technically, for writers to produce their own work. It's very easy if you put a little bit of research into it. Some writers don't even put any research into it, and they're able to put something up really quickly. And that, the process from writing to publishing is a lot shorter. But it's made the quality, terrible in some instances, as I said. I've read some really excellent self-published books, but I've also read some horribly edited and terribly designed atrocities. So it makes it really hard for, good independent or self-published writers to get that kind of respect, especially when you're in a field where a lot of the time your family and friends don't give you any kind of support. A lot of the time, that's a big topic. You always see that in all the writers groups. Someone comes and says, you're still writing? How's that hobby coming along? And the writers just, you can break down if you get that constant kind of negative feedback, especially when you're self-published. People tend to look down on it because they say, okay, well, no one's actually invested in your book and said it's good. It's just you have money to spend and you put it out there, and that doesn't make it a success. So you have to put a lot of work into the publishing of your own things if you decide to go that route. And even with traditional publishing now, you have to be able to push it yourself a lot of the time. I don't think publishers spend as much, or they're not as willing based on the market, and having so much self-published books out there, they may not want to invest a big amount in, every author that they take under their wing.
Yes, I think very true about how accessible it's gotten, the industry. There's a pro and con to that because it's oversaturated, but at the same time, everyone gets a chance. So that is something you can love and hate at the same time. Definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I think lastly, we would want to ask, you've given us some great tips for any budding writers who are probably watching this, but any tips for anyone who wants to get into editing, or content writing?
Any type of writing or editing, anything in that world, I believe, is you need to be able to have a lot of faith in yourself. And if you're going into writing, if you're going into editing, I mean, do your research. There's so many resources. A lot of them are free. You can join communities. You can decide what your style guide is going to be like. You have to have, that base of what you think you want things to look like. If you want to do content writing and you want to do a strategy for a company, think about from the whole aspect of it. Don't just focus on one thing. And in terms of writing, there's so much love in the community. There's so much love, but there's also a lot of negativity. And for any aspect of writing or editing, you need to first take care of your mental health. I think writers, especially artists of all kind, but definitely writers, they tend to struggle with mental health issues, and it can come from opening up to connect with your characters, or as I mentioned, the fear of rejection or not being able to make an income to support yourself, and family and friends thinking it's a hobby. And it's a lot of stress that you take on to be a writer of any kind. And first and foremost, you need to have that base and self-care, because the mind of a writer goes really deep. You need a little extra love and care. And once you protect yourself and you take time away from the screens, time away from the words, time away from your characters. I've had to take a break myself sometimes. You're able to, honor what you are as a writer. You're able to have a little bit of distance and you do your best work. So that's my advice for anyone who wants to get into writing. Please, first and foremost, take care of yourself, and that will take care of your writing.
Lovely. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Great advice.
I think that was great, Sacha. Thanks for joining us and giving us a great insight into your writing process and some superb tips for budding writers.
Sure, it has been a pleasure. What did I just say? It has been a pleasure. I'd like to edit that, right? I'd like to edit that. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to chatting with you guys again soon. Bye,
Great.
guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you